so happy we alive.
This is Patrick Moore, and welcome to www.mooresongs.com. This evening, we're privileged to have a colorful, esoteric writer from Louisville's entertainment magazine, Leo, Carl Brown, with us. And I'm interested in exploring things from Carl's perspective a little bit. Recently, Carl wrote an article in Leo, among other things, about a conference that he attended on bipolar disorder. And it's a very interesting article. I wonder if, just for people that didn't happen to notice this article, maybe you could give us a summary of your experience at the conference.
I attended the third annual conference on bipolar disorders, international conference in Pittsburgh several weeks ago, actually several months ago at this point. And this conference had 700-800 people, researchers primarily in the field, from 28 countries. And I attended as the titular figurehead of Carl Brown's Mad Dog Army. That's a manic depressive support group that's affiliated with the National Manic Depressive Association. And I went there as representative of the Army and learned a great deal. It was cutting edge stuff. While I was there, I raised a question about medicinal marijuana use for mood disorders, which has been an accepted practice of some physicians, notably Dr. Grinspoon of Harvard, who wrote a book on medicinal marijuana. And I raised that question at the conference and received, I think, a very good reception.
What did you find out about the actual use of marijuana for affective disorder?
The studies show that 65% of bipolar 1 manic depressives use marijuana medicinally, and that's a strong statement. Also, the incidence of other drugs don't seem to be attached to marijuana. In other words, marijuana is not a gateway drug. That's a bugaboo, and that's just bad facts. That's not the case. We had a national commission recently return that verdict. But I think that it probably is God's best medicine. It can be used for all sorts of things, from stimulating appetite to reducing pain.
And did you find at the conference, were there people there who, there was 800 researchers. Had anybody done any research on the use of marijuana?
No. As far as I know, there are only 2 small studies that have been done, and they were reported in Grinspoon's book, Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine. But there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. And as I told them when I asked the question, I told them I was there to plant a seed, a cannabis seed. So at least, given the fact that the question was interrupted a few times by applause, which had not happened theretofore at the conference, it seemed to have a lot of sympathy, particularly from the Europeans. A number of Europeans came to me afterwards and said that obviously I was right, that they prescribed it for their patients.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is this from England primarily, or from?
From the Scandinavian countries and also from England. Yeah.
So are you hopeful at this point? I mean, there is ongoing research going on right now, is that right, at the national level?
Right, there's ongoing research, and in fact it's easier to research medicinal use of marijuana now under a court ruling which ordered the FDA to study it. Federal court actually did that. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the field. New Hampshire just recently held in a vote, a plebiscite, that marijuana for medicinal purposes would be legal. And the District of Columbia just voted 69% to that effect. It's going to happen, and eventually the opponents are correct to one extent. Once it has been generally recognized as a medicine, then it'll be generally recognized for recreational use. I happen to like my medicine very much. I'm sorry it's not castor oil, as I was told by a psychiatrist who the other day. I'm sorry that it wince when I inhale, but I do inhale, and I'm a daily user, and if I'm put in prison again for it, I'll just smoke pot there.
Have you been put in prison?
I was put in prison in 1986 for marijuana. I was set up like a bowling pin.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they had a woman that I thought was my girlfriend was approached by the FBI, and she'd had some criminal problems in the past, and they convinced her that what she really wanted to do was to have me make a 4-ounce marijuana buy for her, which I was not in the business of doing and didn't want to do it. It took 9 hours of FBI tape for me to finally say, okay, all right, I'll make a phone call. I made a phone call and served time in prison for it. But
I mean, does the FBI usually come after
4 ounces? No,
4 ounces
no.
of marijuana?
I heard my probation officer say he didn't know of a single case where they prosecuted us a small amount, but they targeted me. But that's okay. They got me according to their rules, and I served my time, and I learned a great deal in prison. Did some good writing in prison.
Really? How long were you in prison?
3.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, back in '86.
Here in Kentucky?
No, they made a federal case out of it. I was sent to a federal prison in North Carolina.
Oh my
We
goodness.
thought they had Al Capone. It's kind of embarrassing when you're in there for 4 ounces of marijuana when you've got guys next to you in the cafeteria who are smuggling boatloads of cocaine and things of this nature. You're kind of embarrassed to admit to your crowd. Mumble under your breath. What are you in here for? Well, I brought a boatload over. How about you? 50 kilos. Me, 4 ounces of marijuana. What? I mumble it. I told him it was a long story. McConnell was behind it.
Oh,
Make a
really?
long story short. Yeah, it was his United States attorney, Joe Whittle, who was either acting on express command or trying to curry favor. He's just a toady.
Wow.
But it was interesting. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I'm prepared. I'm not afraid of it.
One thing I've heard is that even though people feel like marijuana is more prevalent or more used, it's also been said that there's more people in jail now, speaking of prison,
Right.
than even during Reagan.
Right.
But,
We have the largest prison population in the world, outside of possibly the Chinese. And half of those people are in there for drug offenses, which is absurd. We're paying a lot to particularly those dangerous criminals off the streets who are sharing marijuana with their friends, dangerous types.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to interject, pause for a minute here and sing a little song to you. It's not necessarily related to the marijuana use per se. It more has to do with simply the oppression of minorities, whatever their religious philosophy may be. Maybe that's as much as I'll say about it. But we recently had a vote here in Louisville just a couple of days ago, and there was a fairness ordinance on there, and with everything that's happened to the gay community in terms of being decimated by the AIDS epidemic, and not to mention the repression that goes on. There's a part of me that interprets these demands for fairness as being a cry for help or respect in a certain sense. Perhaps like the